"Don't you dare say another word," she hissed, fingers tightening around the battered leather satchel. The glint of gold coins spilled from the mouth of a broken crate, scattering across the dirt floor, each one caked in decades of grime. "You lied to everyone, to me." The man in the wool vest tried to push past her, chest heaving. "That's not yours, I warned you." Her boot struck the crate, sending a hollow clang echoing toward the dark. "Warning me won't save you." She thrust her arm toward the tunnel's mouth, voice cracking. "They've already called the feds, you understand." He staggered back, eyes darting. "You don't know what you've done." She stepped in, voice low. "I know exactly what you did to them." His reply died in his throat as the trapdoor creaked overhead. 3 months before the trapdoor slammed, before she'd ever held Spanish doubloons sunk in Wyoming dirt, everything Taylor owned rattled in the back seat of her rusty Subaru. Taylor pressed her cheek to the steering wheel as the dashboard pinged its last warning. $17 and some spare change in her checking account. She'd seen the bank alert that morning. Her laptop was wedged beneath dog-eared notebooks in the passenger seat, the car interior reeking of fried food and fear. Beyond the windshield, a battered mailbox, the painted Rowan name half shorn by the wind. Her name, too, once. Not anymore, not since the family decided she was a liability in boots and borrowed jeans, the scandal rag freelance journalist provoking lawsuits with every story. The Wyoming plains yawned wide outside, dotted with sagged barbed wire and the gantries of abandoned mining rigs, ghosts watching her final retreat. She forced the car door open. Her foot hit the frozen mud hard. A distant pickup rumbled down the lane. It was gray and slow, like a verdict. The passenger window rolled down, her cousin Ned's voice cut through the brittle morning. "That's all you got left, Taylor. You get the last laugh, huh?" She didn't answer. Ned tossed a legal envelope onto her hood. From the lawyer, didn't bother reading, probably a bill for funeral flowers. He revved, spat dust, and vanished down the drive. Taylor snatched the envelope. She ripped it open with a fingernail. Her hands were shaking. $1, a single crumpled bill folded inside a notarized will. The lawyer's note read, "As per the wishes of your ex-husband and by order of this court, you are to receive the sum of $1, no more, no less. The remainder of the property has been liquidated by consensus, effective immediately. There is nothing further to contest." Taylor bit down on her tongue until she tasted copper. After all these years, 2 decades working cattle and eating Thanksgiving beside a man who now pretended she never existed, organizing archives, pouring herself into local exposes that riled every powerful man in Schuylkill County. Still, he'd left her nothing but a punchline. No house, no closure, just the joke of the dollar pressed in her fist. She almost threw the bill away then, but something in the weight of the envelope stopped her. Under the will, written in slanted block letters, a half-burned old photograph, ink-stained by water, showing her ex-husband as a teenager beside a sagging corn silo, a rusty padlock visible at his feet. In pencil, scribbled on the back, "Don't believe what they say about the mine. Ask at the silo. Dig deep." Taylor's shoulders squared. If you've ever watched someone vanish the truth just to keep you small, just to keep you wondering what you missed, stick around. Because what I found under that old corn silo didn't just change what I knew about my family. It changed everything about who I could trust. By sundown, she was driving, the ice fog swirling in uneven gusts down Old State Route 287 toward the gutted shadows of coal country. The Subaru rattled past the sign for Schuylkill County, the yellow paint flaking, population number whited out by spray paint. Every bone in Taylor's body ached. She wiped the condensation from the windshield with her sleeve, breath puffing in quick clouds, 20 miles to the old Rowan farm. She caught herself glancing at the backseat. Her suitcase was open, her whole wardrobe down to 2 flannels and thrift store jeans, the only shoes, what she'd worn out in the field yesterday and what passed for luck. Memories wormed through the hum of the engine. Her grandfather's stories about Spanish gold draining north from New Mexico, tales she used to think were whiskey-born. Mom's voice, low and urgent, whispering that Rowans don't forget who worked hardest, before she too vanished across state lines one Christmas Eve, leaving Taylor with a business degree, a shameful pile of unpaid freelance invoices, and a grudge nobody in town would speak aloud. The night turned to sleet as she hit the farm's gravel drive. Nothing had changed. The barn was a hulking beast in the dark. The main house, windows broken, sagged like an apology. Off to the north, the corn silo stood half-collapsed, battered by a century of wind. Taylor trudged through 3 inches of icy mud, each step a negotiation with gravity and memory. The padlock, red with rust, bit into her palm as she yanked, still locked, old, cut with notches below the barrel. She muttered, "Don't believe what they say, huh?" With the butt of her flashlight, she hammered. The lock splintered off the latch, metal biting into her knuckles. She stepped inside. The breath she drew was dust-choked, thick with old grain, ammonia, a memory of wet silage. Light flashed across the floor, rats scurried, the floorboards groaning under her weight. Directly beneath the chute, ground that looked disturbed. Taylor knelt, pried at the dirt with her flashlight. 1 foot down, her hand hit metal. A pressure-lock plate, half buried under wet soil. She braced herself, wedged the crowbar beneath the lip, and heaved. The hatch split open with a shuddering groan. Stale air raced out, carrying something else with it. A faint metallic tang, and a low echo from deep underground. Taylor's flashlight probed the darkness. The outline of a rough-hewn wooden ladder stretching below, her pulse thudded. She wedged her notebook under her arm, gritted her teeth, and started the descent. At the bottom, a dirt tunnel, cold and narrow, the air ancient, unmoved in years. She moved forward, every step stirring up the scent of clay and regret, flashlight trembling against the rock. Hook 1, if someone buried a tunnel under the family land, what exactly had they been hiding, and who was supposed to find it? Taylor's breath clouded in front of her as she hunched through the first bend of the tunnel. Her boots kicked sodden clumps of earth, each step a muffled thud swallowed by the silence. The beam swept over timbers, some bowing under years of pressure, others marked with charcoal symbols, arrows, crosses, foreign letters she didn't recognize. The floor sloped downward, making her footing uneasy, muscle memory from years of farm work only just enough to keep her upright. A spider dropped from the roof, landing in her hair. She swatted, tossing her notebook to free herself, heart thumping against her ribs. She snatched the notebook back. Pages stuck out where her clumsy scribbles had traced every rumor her family had ever denied. About missing payrolls, hush money, family secrets, and lawsuits sealed behind closed doors. The tunnel forked, one side braced in new timber, the other slanting off with ancient boards, blackened with rot. Taylor swallowed. She turned into the newer branch. Down 20 more feet, the ground grew spongy. Her boot heels scraped over something hard. She crouched, brushing away dirt to reveal the corner of a battered wooden trunk, iron handles rusted into place. She pried at the trunk's lid. It resisted, the metal grating against swollen timber. Taylor's fingers dug into the seams. She pulled until her muscles screamed. The lid creaked. The smell, old sweat and horses, something chemical hit her sharp. Taylor gagged, blinking. Inside were tight bundles of canvas, something heavy wrapped within. She unspooled the edge, hands shaking. Gold coins spilled into the dirt, their yellow gleam cold and sharp even in the weak flashlight. Not new. Spanish, she realized, doubloons and pieces of 8 stamped with foreign kings. Taylor's breath snagged in her throat. She picked one up, thumb tracing the design, its crust of clay and verdigris. Then another. A few coins tumbled free, rolling into the dark. Heart lurching, she spotted a faded ledger caught beneath the pile. She jolted it loose, dried leather flaking as she unfolded the cover. The first page wasn't English. The second, nearly all numbers, weights, dates, silver to gold ratios. And in ballpoint on the third page. If you're reading this, they've already lied to you, Taylor. They took the land for prospecting, not truth. Under treaty, this ground never belonged to any Rowan. Don't trust the men from the company. Ask next door. The truth is buried deeper than the gold. Taylor's hands shook so badly the coin slipped from her grasp, thunking against the trunk's side. The ledger smelled of mold and old ink. She flipped further. In the back, a receipt stamped with a mining company's logo, the same firm that had bought out her ex-husband's last remaining assets for a pittance the week he died. She pressed a knuckle to her lips. Her family hadn't lost the land. Someone had sold it fast and dirty because of what was underneath. And there was a map too, a penciled sketch. The tunnel branched off beneath the silo floor, leading straight to the north boundary, abutting neighbor property. One word written along the boundary: sanctuary. Taylor's pulse fluttered. She followed the map, crouching lower, the clutch of coins heavy in her sweatshirt pocket. 10 steps further, a crossbeam had been hacked rough open. The tunnel mouth carried the faint trace of fresh earth. Taylor swept her light to the left. Laid against the wall, a second trunk, remnants of corn sacks stacked beside it. Someone had been living here, or at least hiding out. Inside this trunk, another ledger with newer handwriting and a rolled deed, her grandfather's name at the top, and in small print an addendum: sale null under sovereign claim if prior treaty recorded. Taylor snapped a picture on her phone, her hand unsteady. She almost missed the whisper, boots scraping stone at the far tunnel bend. Taylor froze. Footsteps retreated, faint and fast. She killed the flashlight. Her breath roared in her ears. Someone else knew. Taylor clutched the coins and ledger and climbed back up into the gale. Outside, the silo screamed in the wind. 36 hours remained before the IRS would seize the land for lack of tax payments. And Taylor, jobless, friendless, broke, now held enough evidence to ignite an old war between corporate suits and people who signed their names only after being forced off their own ground generations before. She ran for the car, box hugged to her chest. At dawn, the county clerk's office loomed out of the mist in the only open shopfront in Coal Springs. Fluorescent lights flickered inside. Taylor shuffled in, carrying mud and coins and paranoia with her. "Ma'am, we open at 8, the clerk deadpan behind 3 inches of glass. Taylor pressed the deed and a handful of coins against the window. "You need to look at these now. Someone's about to steal the wrong ground." The clerk squinted at the gold, whistling low. "What exactly you think this is, lady?" "Spanish gold pre-Civil War. It doesn't belong to Rowans. It never did. That tunnel," Taylor broke off, aware of the room's sudden stillness. "You have to check the treaty claims." The clerk picked up the phone. "Alma, bring Mr. Redbird from Tribal Affairs." 10 minutes, 2 cups of burnt office coffee, and the room was crowded. Mr. Redbird arrived fast, wind-burned with blunt boots. He squinted at Taylor, then the coins. "You say you found these on Rowan land?" Taylor nodded, sliding the trunk forward. "There's a tunnel. It runs to next-door property. This deed," she pointed, "there's a clause, if there's prior treaty claim, federal law trumps the sale." "That's some bombshell, Miss Rowan." Redbird lifted the page, lips pressed tight. "I need to see this tunnel." Behind Taylor, the morning sun cut through the glass, lighting her reflection. Hollow-eyed, jaw set, adrenaline burning off last night's fear. "Take me there," Redbird said. Her phone buzzed, IRS deadline in 60 hours. Tick, tick. They filled 2 trucks within the hour, county clerk, tribal affairs, one stoic sheriff who couldn't look Taylor in the eye as he radioed the feds. They drove back past the sagging fences and howling windshields. Taylor held her breath. Redbird led the group underground, trailing his flashlight as Taylor pointed out the route through the branching tunnels. At every crossbeam, he muttered softly in Arapaho, words Taylor didn't recognize. The map matched the lines she'd memorized. At the second trunk, he stopped. "This is the boundary, the sanctuary tract, it's on our records. That tunnel, if it crosses into it, it's federal and tribal property." Taylor nodded, kneeling by the coins and ledgers. She pointed to the sale addendum. "He sold it after the mineral survey. He must have known. Why bury this?" Redbird's gaze never wavered. "You said your ex-husband liquidated everything, right?" "Yeah," Taylor forced a bitter laugh. "Left me a single dollar. The company bought it at 1/3 the value, not for cattle, but for what was underneath." Redbird flipped through the ledger, eyes widening. Wire transfers, tax shelters, ghost companies, all rooted through this mining firm. That's a RICO case if I ever saw one. The group surfaced, the Wyoming sun now raw on their faces. "You're sure," the sheriff murmured, "you want to go federal with this?" Redbird nodded, voice grave. "It belongs to the tribe, and now the feds will take the rest." Taylor's pulse hammered. "What's next?" Redbird's eyes gentled. "We make the call. The company men, you stay away from them now, ma'am. This is bigger than you or me." "But the IRS." He cut her off. "With this, your tax deadline is on hold. The law covers you now." Taylor let her knees buckle in the dry grass, the trunk of coins at her feet. She couldn't breathe. Then she did, in one long, ragged gulp. For a moment, she almost believed she'd finally come out on top. But at midnight, halfway down the motel hallway, a heaviness in her chest, someone tapped her shoulder. Taylor turned. Ned blocked the exit, voice low and false casual. "I know what you did at the farm." She squared her jaw. "You know nothing, Ned." He grinned. "You think some old gold changes anything. You know who owns the company, right? You think they'll let a loudmouth like you run free." He stepped forward, his breath stank of whiskey. "You walk away now or you won't walk at all." Taylor's back pressed into the wall. "Try me." Ned's voice dropped. "You don't know what you've started." Taylor let the words hang in the silence, heart pounding. "I do now, and the feds are coming for you people too." He retreated, jaw clenched. She ran out into the night, the wind howling through the valley like a warning. The next morning, Taylor holed up in the nearest truck stop diner, nerves frayed, her hands shook. She texted Redbird, forwarding every photo, every scan of ledger and deed. "Evidence is all documented, tunnel shown, coins photographed. They tried to threaten me, do it now." He replied moments later, "Stay put, federal warrant being signed now." By noon, the FBI showed up. Black SUVs outside the mining company's regional office. Taylor parked a block away, watching from the window of an abandoned shop. Agents in windbreakers stormed the porch, handcuffing men in pressed suits and snakeskin boots. She gripped the window frame. Later in the sheriff's basement, Taylor, Redbird, and two agents pored over everything, receipts, ledgers, the coins themselves. Dialogue snapped between them. An agent tapped the coins. "These are pre-territory. How long have they been here?" Taylor shrugged, still wary. "At least since my grandfather's day, maybe further back. We always heard stories, but the companies." Redbird interrupted. "They scammed folks out of this land, knowing the federal government couldn't intervene if nobody told. They used our own rules against us." The agent nodded, face unreadable. "It's all going back, everything bought under false claims, including the land." Taylor exhaled, slow, aching, as the implications tumbled over her. "Anything else, Miss Rowan?" another agent asked. She nodded. "Yeah, tell them they can keep my dollar." Cries echoed from the main street that evening. Two men in company windbreakers marched across the courthouse lawn in handcuffs. Faces flooded with shame as the news spread faster than fire through the valley. Taylor watched from under the peeled Coca-Cola sign. More agents stormed through abandoned office blocks, hauling boxes. Ned's truck sat empty in the lot, silent now, his threats useless. Redbird stopped alongside her with a soft smile. "You get to call what happens next, Taylor. Feds will keep pressing, but the coins, the history, they're preserved now, not buried deeper." Taylor met his gaze, voice rough-edged. "All I ever wanted was the truth, and to stop pretending my family mattered more than it did." He nodded. "You get to matter, on your terms." The FBI's statement went statewide. Mining company executives indicted on wire fraud, tax evasion, racketeering. No way out but the one Taylor forced open by digging hard where the ground was softest. In the wake of the arrests, local press flipped from disdain to awe. Underdog reporter brings down kingpins. One headline blared. Taylor grinned for once at the recognition, a rare prize. She spent another day in the county, meeting with Redbird, lawyers, and a historian from the Bureau of Land Management, making sure everything she'd found landed where the old treaties had left them. unburied, accounted for to the last coin. When the credits rolled, Taylor was $47 richer, every cent in her own name. She fumbled with a rental key, the trunk full of ledgers safely locked at the tribal archive, and no reason to stay another night in Schuylkill. She thumbed her phone under the splintered neon. Loki from now on, financially free enough. I'll pick the next town with people who keep their word. By the time her Subaru hit the edge of Coal Springs, the wind had shifted from east to north. Taylor cracked a window, breathing in cold mountain air, mouth tasting the metallic tang that comes only from seeing justice done, hard and clear. She coasted down the valley, past markers too old to bother with human names, past money and lies and threats all spent. The world was wide again, no ties left behind. Sometimes a person has to dig where it hurts most, where the bones lie and the gold with them, to find not just what was lost, but who they can become when no one else is writing the story for them. Not every inheritance is measured in coin. If you've ever wondered what you'd discover if you stopped believing other people's version of your life, maybe, sometimes, the only person who can start over is the one who's lost everything. And maybe, in the open country of your own making, there's finally room to breathe. But Taylor did not leave right away. The Subaru idled at the city limit, a blue shadow against the waning sunset. Her hand stayed on the wheel, but her eyes traced the brittle skyline of Schuylkill, a latticework of telephone wires, windbreak poplars peeling in the sideways dusk. This wasn't the story she'd imagined for herself. Rootless reporter, trunk full of half-buried evidence with a new beginning yawning ahead somewhere west. But endings were never that clean. A voice in her head, her mother S, or maybe her own after too many caffeinated midnight rewrites, kept repeating, "Before you go, finish what's here." She shifted into park and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. The line rang endlessly. Ned answered brittle and hoarse, "What, Taylor?" "You're lucky the feds want paperwork, not blood," she said. "But listen, what you threatened me with, who told you to say it?" A silence spun out. "Doesn't matter now," Ned spat. "It's over. They're coming for everything. You get your clean slate. Family means nothing to you anymore." She let his bitterness settle, pressing on. "I'm not asking about family. I'm asking if you know anybody else is still in the woods. Old hands, not company men." He snorted. "You really think anyone not Botan paid for ever got near that gold? Only one person ever tried to warn you, and you never listened." The phone went dead. He hung up. Taylor stared out at the blinking lights. An engine shuddered in the distance, a night train heading west with nothing but cattle cars and dust. She stared into the twilight, something unsettled rumbling through her chest. The story was out, the facts cataloged. But something bigger, a memory, an absence, a final door, still swung open in her mind. She checked her phone. One new text from Janine, the upstate historical archivist who'd sat with her through coffee and 2 cake donuts, scanning the ledgers. It read, "There's another signature on the last deed, not your grandfather S, different initials. You want answers." Taylor squinted. She pulled up the photo Janine sent, a grainy close-up on the corner of the contract where, under Rowan's name, faint pencil script read LC. She couldn't place it. Her breath snagged. A forgotten relative, land company, someone quietly watching. She sent Janine a quick reply. "Who was LC? Can you pull any probate or residency records?" Not 10 minutes later, Janine rang back. Found a court file, a Lucy Cree, registered nurse, lived on the sanctuary border until 1985. No Rowan blood, but she signed as witness. No next of kin. The file mentions she lived alone but watched the property for squatters and surveyors. Ring a bell. Taylor closed her eyes. Grandma Quinn used to send holiday pies down to an old woman in the North Tract, always warning the family not to bother her. She'd never thought twice about the kindness or the caution. Taylor checked the time. Too late for the county office, too dark for a hike, but she owed Lucy or herself one last look. She gritted her teeth and called Redbird. His voice picked up calm and sure. "You're supposed to be gone by now," he teased. Last question, do you know who Lucy Cree was? A pause, then, sure, watched the line for every neighbor who cared. Told us decades ago the Rowan mine wasn't theirs to sell. No one wanted to hear it. Taylor hesitated. Is there anybody left on Sanctuary? Redbird sighed, not since Lucy. Most folks forgot her, but she held every map in her head, never trusted a vault or a lawyer. If you're thinking of following up, take a flashlight. Her cabin's still at the north edge, just watch for loose dogs. Taylor grinned despite herself. That's all I needed. She went, boots crushing the hardpan as she parked by the sorry remains of a post fence and followed the old tractor path north, past where the Rowan fields gave way to brush and shadowed willows. A mile and a half of uneven ground, headlights casting strange ghosts until she shut the engine, walking the last few yards by the fading glow of her phone. The cabin stood hunched and fenced with tumbleweed and old horseshoes, smoke-blackened but whole. Taylor hesitated at the threshold, feeling the hush that settles only on places too long forgotten. The door groaned open. Inside, dust curled on everything. Enamel sink, battered bureau, hand-stitched quilt thrown over a narrow cot. And on the table, meticulously cataloged piles of index cards, each stamped with a date and a location, notes in tight script. She drew a breath and flipped through the cards. Names, numbers, directions, mineral leases, surveyor warnings. The last handful were recent, no more than 5 years before Lucy died. Boundary redrawn by company November 1982. Watch for signatures not matching deeds. If anyone comes asking, all mine ledgers are hidden under main barn, southeast wall. Taylor's pulse quickened. She grabbed her notebook, scribbling madly, phone, camera, snapping everything. By the dim evening torch, she found the cabin's only safe, hidden behind a nailed baking tin. Inside, a bundle of letters, a faded photograph of a younger Lucy beside 3 scowling men in mining overalls. One of them Taylor recognized instantly. Her grandfather, stiff and unhappy, standing next to a surveyor waving a rolled deed. On the last page, a line. If the Rowan gold gets found, FBI or no, make sure no law forgets who held the land first. Taylor pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her own heartbeat through the thin flannel. Lucy's whole life had been about holding the line, recording every slight, every encroachment, the slow theft of a country, acre by acre. She took photos of every document and, on a hunch, dialed Redbird again, breathless as she paced the tiny kitchen. You were right, she said. Lucy kept a record of every land grab. Letters, photos, proof the lines were changed. Your people can use these, can't they? A short, astonished laugh answered her. We can, and we will. We thought the ledgers were enough, but this is the rest. Taylor stared around the empty den. Someone needs to mark this place or protect it. We'll take care, Redbird promised. Come by tomorrow, I'll show you what's being done with what you found. Taylor ended the call. The night pressed close, silent and cold, the last pieces of the old story fitting together at last. When the sun rose, she drove downtown to find Redbird already waiting by the courthouse steps. Wind flicked at his jacket, the morning full of promise and threat, courthouse windows gleaming with the fresh burnish of a new day. He waved her up the steps. The clerk's ready. The FBI's sending someone for those new records, Lucy's effects, everything. And you, he offered a faint, private smile, the kind that acknowledged how hard-won every inch of this felt, you get your piece of the story back. Are people going to believe any of it? Taylor asked, wary. He looked out over Main Street, sun climbing above the grain elevator and distant, shrinking town. They'll believe what's written, but what lasts is what's shown. The ledgers are set for the archive, the coins for the Federal Museum, and the land, his grin grew, fierce and proud, is never going silent again. Taylor tucked her hands in her pockets, boots scuffing the courthouse stone. She thought about the gold, how it started as a rumor, became a secret, then evidence, and now finally a bridge. She thought of Lucy, of the long line of witnesses, known and forgotten, who tried to keep the record clear when history only wanted it blurred. Of the townsfolk who would never say thank you, and the ones who would never forgive a Rowan for speaking up. Of her mother, wherever she was, proud or disappointed. "Can I ask you something?" she said suddenly. Redbird glanced over, patient. Taylor fumbled for the question. "Is it ever enough? Once the truth is out, does it really help anybody?" He chuckled, gentle. "It helps the next person who wonders if they're crazy for remembering things different. The kids growing up here, my son, your niece if she ever comes back, they'll know this land wasn't just stolen in the dark." Taylor pressed her lips together. The courthouse clock told the hour, a long, clear chime. The rest of the day moved in a blur. USB sticks handed over, statements signed, news vans parked awkwardly at odd angles on Main. The local reporter from KQSU cornered her for an interview. Taylor, feeling both raw and defiant, chose her words carefully. "There's always someone who wants to bury a story and someone who wants to dig it up. You want to know what you're made of." She looked straight into the lens. "Try telling the truth after everyone around you tells you you're wrong." Back on the street, she found Ned, hands stuffed in rawhide gloves, face collapsing in on itself. "You did it, Tay," he mumbled, less an accusation and more the ragged astonishment of someone whose whole world just slipped sideways. "You actually did it." She stared at her cousin, seeing in his slouched stance and haunted eyes a little of the anger she'd carried all her life, and a lot of the frightened loyalty that came from growing up Rowan. "It wasn't just me, Ned, but if you want to do one decent thing, go to Redbird, tell him what you know, help put it right." He hesitated, swallowing hard. Would it make a difference? "For someone, eventually," Taylor answered quietly. "For yourself, maybe more." He nodded almost imperceptibly and shuffled off toward Redbird, shoulders heavier but his gait resolved. Taylor watched him go, her chest aching in a way that wasn't hurt anymore. She let herself enjoy it for the space of a breath before she turned away, passing by faces she recognized. Rita from the hardware store, Mrs. Haskell with her snow-white braid, Will the postal clerk with 1,000 secrets. One by one, they gave her a look, a mix of pride, suspicion, and sometimes the wary humor of people reconciled to inconvenient truths. Taylor nodded to each, storing the moment in memory, a new kind of inheritance. By dusk, Redbird texted, "Can you see the archive room?" Taylor unlocked the Subaru for the final time and drove through the fading light, following Redbird's directions to the newly painted one-room museum set up in the old schoolhouse. Inside, rows of display cases sparkled. The trunk of coins, now under heavy glass, gleamed against red velvet. But what drew her most were the handwritten ledgers, their covers cracked and battered, standing open to pages marked with both old names and Lucy's steady hand. Redbird stood beside her, guiding her eyes. "Everything in here is public record now. Names of every family, claims made and contested. The truth can't go back underground." He stopped at something new. A black and white photo set propped near the old wooden ladder from the silo. Taylor's breath caught, her ex-husband as a teen, her mother younger by 2 decades, Lucy Cree in the background, her arms folded stubbornly across her chest. Redbird smiled. "We put up her story today. People should know who kept watch when it mattered." Taylor ran her fingers over the glass, tracing Lucy's outline. "She did more than I ever could." He shook his head. "You finished the run she started. No one does it alone." Taylor closed her eyes, letting the low hum of the archive settle her nerves. Reporters' voices still echoed outside, their headlights tracing glory on the windows, but in here, in the hush, everything felt honest and real. When she left the trunk of coins exactly where it belonged, guarded, catalogued, no longer hers or any Rowan's. The next morning the phone rang early. A voice, oddly familiar, met her. "Miss Rowan, sorry, it's Detective Garvey out of Laramie. Remind you of something. Years ago I called about the Wilmot fraud. Turns out your old reporting saved us a mess back then." Taylor sat up straighter. "Didn't think I'd hear from you again." "I've been following the news, heard about the coins, the lawsuits. You ever need a reference, employment, legal, anything, you call me." Not everyone around here sees past the accent, but you did good." She smiled wider than she'd thought possible at sunrise. "Thanks, Garvey, that means more than you know." He hesitated. "One last thing, you heading out or sticking around?" Taylor looked toward the horizon where the sun was melting the last frost from the dead lawn. "I'm moving on. I've got 100 article ideas, but I think I owe myself not to write about this place for a while." He laughed. "That's probably for the best." After she hung up, she made her way to the church graves under the cottonwoods one last time. She placed her grandfather's old service photo on the cool stone above his name. "Wish you'd been braver," she murmured, "but maybe you tried in your way." The wind buffeted her hair. Taylor took off her hat and let the gust carry away the last vestige of the person who'd arrived just days ago, defeated, angry, small. She knelt, pressing her palm to the earth, and promised herself, never again would she let someone else write her story or silence the hard truth for simple comfort. Across the valley, the new sun flooded the land, warming the fractured ground. When she climbed into the Subaru at last, she found something small in her pocket, the single dollar from the will, creased and soft as old cotton. She drove down the interstate until the post fences vanished, and at a gas station outside Rawlins, she tucked that dollar, anonymous and final, between the pages of her old notebook, the last keepsake of a story finally set right. At the counter, she paid for coffee with coins that no one would ever mistake for gold, smiled at the clerk's perfectly ordinary good morning, and said, "This time, keep the change." She slid into the driver's seat, the landscape rushing outward, the future unfurling like clean linen, and for the first time in years, Taylor Rowan let herself believe that there were new stories ahead, hers to shape, no longer stolen, never truly lost.